Good evening. As the deadly coronavirus reaches critical juncture across the country, the government of the Republic of Kenya is wasting the most critical resource for a response and a fight: trust. This as the international community continues to vilify authorities in mainland China for what they say are lies, cover-ups, and repression, which have failed to stop the virus, which has clocked 82,500. How responsive and responsible was the Kenyan government in allowing landing rights for a flight from China with more than 200 passengers on board? Milia Kisianya has that update here on the program. In sports, Davis Mberia and Benjamin Mwaka will bring us up to speed with developments from the Spanish capital, Madrid, as giants, the White Galacticos, fell to English champions Manchester City at the Stadio Santiago Bernabeu. Elsewhere in the French city of Paris, Olympique Lyonnais overcame Italian champions Juve in the first legs of the UEFA Champions League played across Europe. On News Compass tonight, we will be talking to the Member of Parliament for Uriri constituency, Maknyamita, nominated Senator Naomi Wako, Kipchumba Karuri, lawyer and political strategist, and former Deputy Speaker of the National Assembly, Farah Maalim. Our attention will be the crisis in the Kenyan capital, Nairobi. As cornered by cases in courts, Governor Mike Sonko has surrendered the city of Nairobi. More or less call it an era of errors. But will the national government seal the loophole in City Hall and seal that hole in County Hall? I am Ayub Abdikadir Abdi. Our sign anchor tonight is Joyce Wairimu. 27th of February 2019, the last Thursday of the second month, 2020, I beg your pardon, the last Thursday of the second month of the second century of the decade. I am Ayub Abdikadir Abdi. This is what's coming up in the next 30 minutes. Welcome to the broadcast. The short SMS code is 40920. The hashtag on Twitter is News Compass. Later, we'll sample some of your feedback here on the broadcast. Now, the government says it has taken several steps to keep the public safe across the country. The update followed concern raised by Kenyans on the preparedness of the country in fighting the coronavirus after the government advised more than 200 Chinese nationals who arrived in the country from China on Wednesday to quarantine themselves for 14 days. Of course, aboard Chinese Southern Airlines, which resumed flights to Kenya from China, even as the disease continues to spread across the world, with concerns raised by the global health organizations, including the World Health Organizations, of how China has handled the crisis ever since the outbreak in December 2019.
Kenyans were amused by government's decision to allow the plane into the country, while other countries were blocking the Chinese from coming into their countries. Health Chief Administrative Secretary Rashid Aman says the plane had a total of 209 passengers, 13 of whom were Kenyans, 198 Chinese, and the rest on transit.
Many of the Chinese who are coming here as workers live alone, so it is not an issue. They self-quarantine in their facilities on their own. But I think we should be careful not to label people in a certain way. I think it would be dangerous to do that.
The arrival of the Chinese Southern Airlines craft raised fears among the public, given the quick spread of the COVID-19 virus that has killed at least 2,800 people across the world so far. Many took to Twitter and other social media platforms to complain about a country with misplaced priorities, noting key weaknesses in the health system. Using hashtag coronavirus Kenya, they said it would be best to keep people from China out and focus on protecting the country, as it would likely be unable to contain an outbreak.
What is happening in Wuhan and Hubei province, Wuhan city and Hubei province, is that there is a lockdown. So let's not talk about because it's a lockdown and people cannot travel freely. We are now moving into the area of the students and evacuation, which I would not want to address, because I think Ministry of Foreign Affairs should be able to address that.
CAS Aman says it would be discriminatory to deny Kenyans entry into the country. The ministry responded to questions on matters of isolation versus self-quarantine in efforts to prevent infections or spread of the disease.
Why don't we just stop the Chinese from coming in? And I think that is a discriminatory approach, given now how the virus is spreading in many different countries. It doesn't mean because somebody is coming from China that they have it. I don't think anybody would want to be labeled that because you come from somewhere, you have this virus and we need to buy you.
The ministry further reiterates that it continues to maintain a heightened surveillance system at all points of entry, health facilities, and communities across the country.
So there is work to be done in terms of creating those spaces, creating the spaces for the divisions so that we can have the 120, and the capacity is 120 beds. We should have that facility up and running and ready to receive any cases that turn out to be positive for this.
Now, the national government, through the Ministry of Foreign Affairs, has failed to address its preparedness on alert in regards to what it has put in place on the global crisis on the coronavirus. This as it failed to address issues in difficulty in matter of handling the matter with regards to the Foreign Affairs Cabinet Secretary, Ambassador Rachel Omamo, who today appeared before the Parliamentary Defence and Foreign Affairs Committee in regards to the questions that were raised by Kenyans yesterday following the touching down of the Chinese flight from China with more than 200 people on board. This is what she had to say when she appeared before the Parliamentary Committee.
I don't have the capacity, the knowledge, or the understanding. And I think it would be wrong for me to go down that path if I can't answer those questions in the detail that's required.
This was earlier on today when the Foreign Affairs Minister Rachel Omamo couldn't contain herself from the tough head-on questions on the coronavirus care from a section of the committee members from the Defense and Foreign Relations Department.
With regard to the flight that came in, that flight was dealt with in accordance with WHO guidelines. Those who were on it were monitored and have been asked to self-quarantine.
Now that we have had the situation where you said self-quarantine, and the member from our focus confirmed that they are not self-quarantined, that they are moving in the streets, do we have the intention of just saying stop flights from China in the interim? Do we have that plan, or it is just blanket that they can come in anytime they want?
Omamo was at loggerheads with the Furious Committee members who sought for answers after failing to answer the details of the passengers and of which nations they were from on the said flight that jetted into the country from China yesterday.
As far as I'm concerned, I realize that the Ministry of Foreign Affairs, where you had Madam CS, he is not well coordinated in terms of disseminating information that can actually allay fears to parents. We are not dealing with students here. We are dealing with Kenyans. And it is the duty of this country to protect our Kenyans outside.
But instead, so to confirm, it was under control and all passengers were self-quarantined.
So far, we're able to manage the situation where they are children who feel that they need more assistance. Our embassy in China is in constant touch with these students.
I mean, countries are putting global restrictions on their countries. And all you can afford to say is that we have enhanced our diagnostic equipment. Why do you want to diagnose what you can prevent? I mean, this country is a joke to the extent that, as CS is saying, oh, we can't evacuate our people because, you know, they are safe there. You load in Chinese, 239 Chinese in this country from the hotspot, and you feel nothing about it. Are we being held hostage by the Chinese?
She, however, did not specify the guidelines and the plan was subjected to. Regarding to the country's preparedness, Omamo ruled out the possibility of evacuating at least 100 Kenyans in Wuhan, who comprised 91 students, out of which 2 are expectant. But, however, confirmed of the government having disbursed 8.5 million Kenya shillings to support the students through basic needs supplies.
Iran, the Minister of Health just died because of coronavirus. Do you want it to come to this country, for corona to get to this country, so that the nation can act? Everyone now is looking for masks, and people are saying your answers are underwhelming. Let's take the seriousness that it deserves. We live in this country. We don't want to die. We have locusts to fight. We cannot afford to fight coronavirus.
to indicate that I am not taking this thing as a collective. I've told you that all these decisions are from a cabinet ad hoc committee, and we're working on this together.
As of now, the coronavirus scare in China, the cases have gotten to 82,585, while those reported dead stand at 2,800. With many countries placing a ban on the travel advisory to and from China, the latest country as we speak right now is Saudi Arabia, just in a bid to curb the corona scare. While on the other side, Kenya continues receiving the Chinese nationals, the latest batch being 239 Chinese nationals who jetted into the country yesterday. Milia Kisenya for Ebru TV.
Thank you, Winnie. We get an update on the numbers so far globally in regard to this study done by John Hopkins. This is the heat map and the total number of confirmed cases across the globe. So far, 82,550, as you can see on your screens. 78,497 in mainland China. South Korea so far 1,766. Others account for 705, including Italy, Iran, Japan, Singapore, Hong Kong, the United States, Kuwait, Thailand, Bahrain, Taiwan, Germany, Australia, Malaysia, France, Vietnam, Spain, the United Kingdom, and the United Arab Emirates, Canada, and Macau, Iran, Switzerland, Oman, Israel, India, the Philippines, Croatia, Austria, Greece, and the list goes on until the countries that share one each: Sri Lanka, Egypt, Estonia, Romania, Brazil. Now, coming to the total deaths so far in mainland China, this is the so far the number that we have across the people who have died. This is the total confirmed cases of that have recovered: 23,383, that is in mainland China, and 1,068 recovered in mainland China, and including the, of course, diversification and the breakdown of the cases of recovery, which number up to 33,252. And let me get the number of deaths: 2,810 so far. Of that, 2,641 in mainland China, 26 in Iran in the Middle East, 14 in Italy, so far the most affected country in Europe, 13 in mainland China, that is in terms of Heilongjiang, that is province, and South Korea so far recorded 13 deaths, 7 in the city of the province of Guangdong in China, and equally what appears to be Hebei, equally a province in China, Beijing, and the deaths in other countries that include Hong Kong, which is an autonomous region, and coming to the others, which are Taiwan and the Philippines. So far, this is the map, and you can see the heat map updated last 8:23 p.m., 27th day of February 2020. So this is the so far the main hit, that area that is affected in mainland China. In Europe, in Italy is the most affected country. Algeria, so far 1 case in Africa, so is Egypt, and we have the United States in North America, and equally cases were confirmed in Spain and in, that is Germany, and in the United Kingdom. Australia equally, there are cases that number up to about 43 as per the breakdown done by the John Hopkins Center in regard to the tracking down of the coronavirus. Now we come back home and take this story that pertains to the Office of the Deputy President in regard to the investigations into the death of police officer who was on guard the day that deal happened. Sergeant Kipyegon Kenei is still ongoing, with the government pathologist Johansen Oduor visiting the home of the victim at Imara Daima Estate in Nairobi to ascertain whether he committed suicide or was murdered. Our reporter Jeff Khaimba spent the day there and filed the following report.
The family and Kenyans at large are still searching for the answers over the death of Sergeant Kipyegon Kenei, a police officer deployed at the office of the Deputy President William Ruto. All eyes are now set on the DCI detectives under George Kinoti, government pathologist Johansen Oduor, forensics experts, government chemists, in unraveling the mystery of Kenei's death. After conducting autopsy on the body of Kenei at the Chiromo mortuary on Wednesday and revealing that he died of a gunshot wound, on Thursday, Johansen Oduor toured the home of Kenei at the Imara Daima Estate to establish whether he was murdered or committed suicide.
Actually, tumeingia, as you could see, from the gate to the house, to the site where he was found, and we've looked at each and everything. However, remember, there are other things which are coming up. There is also lab tests which are coming up. There are swabs which can tell us whether it was there or now. So
For close to 5 good hours, Odor camped here with an intent of finding out the truth.
We have done a lot of analysis, and we are still piecing together so that we can be able to come up to a conclusion. So this is an ongoing process. As you can see, the crime scene officers are still inside there. So what I can just tell you is that it's an ongoing process, but there are so many things we've seen which you don't mention at this juncture until we piece things together and can come up with a conclusion. Yes.
On Wednesday, preliminary autopsy results revealed that Kipyegon Kene was killed by a bullet that was fired from a pistol held to his chin. It was also revealed that he died a day or two before his body was found lying on the floor at his Twiga Court house in Imaradaima Estate in Nairobi.
Remember, it's an ongoing process here, and things can come as time go by. Yeah, it's an ongoing process here.
The autopsy report through Dr. Johansson Odor shows the body of Kene had no bruises, an indication that maybe Kene was murdered. Odor still holds there was blood on the floor where the late Kene's body was dumped. Before meeting his death, Sergeant Kene was on duty the time the former Sports Cabinet Secretary Rashida Cheza Mohammed and the other guests appeared at the Harambee Annex, the office of the Deputy President William Ruto, where they had planned to meet the DP over the dubious arms deal amounting to about 40 billion Kenyan shillings. It's exactly 1 week since the body of the late Kene was found in his house at Imaradaima in Nairobi. Until now, it remains unclear whether Kene was murdered or he committed suicide. Reporting for Ebru TV, I'm Jeff Haimba.
Now, teenage pregnancies is one of the ills in this society. It is the main cause of school dropouts across the country and early motherhood equally in Kenya. A report on the burden of teenage pregnancy and motherhood in Kenya has been tabled today, and the situation is dire according to the report. Narok County is leading with 40% of teenage pregnancies across the country, and the burden, whereas Murang'a County is the last with only 1%.
Sai mambo imebadilika. Msasi amshauri mtoto, mtoto amtii msasi. Haya mambo mawili inashangia hawa watu kutangatanga.
The old man represents millions of parents who are angered by negative impact of teenage pregnancy in the country. 18% of young girls countrywide are within these statistics. Percentages in the counties are as follows. Narok has 40% of teenage pregnancy and early motherhood. Homa Bay has 33%. Murang'a is the least with 6%. 3.9% of teenage girls have experienced unsafe abortion. 37% of girls and 40% of boys have experimented sex. Narok is one of the most affected counties.
We have said 18%, yeah, we have 18% national average in terms of teenage pregnancy. That means 1 in every 5 school-going teenage girls are pregnant before the age of 20.
40% of the births that occurred in Narok County were from teenage girls aged 15 to 19 years.
The situation shows no sign of improvement, and it's not different from previous years.
So if you're looking at the last survey, to 2009, 755,000 girls were pregnant in their teenage years. In 2014, that number rose to 843. And my colleague gave the analogy of them being in school to give us the picture of how serious this means for us.
Former Education Minister Sam Ongeri and Narok Senator Ledama Olekina have called upon the government to bring the situation under control, as Ledama disputed the statistics, saying Nairobi has a higher rate of teen pregnancy than Narok County.
Vile changamoto mpya imetokea kulingana na zile mimba za mapema kwa watoto wetu ambao hawastahili kupata mimba katika miaka 10 hadi 15 kwa sababu hawajafikia kiwango cha kuwa mama.
Ile statistics ambayo tulipewa leo walisema kwamba Narok County watoto zaidi ya 15,000 mwaka uliopita, mwaka 2018 waliweza kupata mimba. Swala ni hivi, ni nini ambaye inasababisha?
The situation is dire and this is why.
Lakini kukalisha chini mtoto imekuwa ngumu, na pia mtoto kuongeleshwa imekuwa ngumu kutii.
Kina babu walikuwa na keti na watoto wa kiume, na kina nyanya wanaketi na watoto wa kike na wafundisha what is called sex education. Kwa sahihi hatuna hiyo.
where now cultures mix. And when we have a mix of cultures, then the honorable thing to do, and actually the right thing to do, is to abandon retrogressive cultural practices.
Education is the vaccine to all societal vices. Teenage pregnancy is driven by a number of factors, including lack of education on sexual and reproductive health, poverty, early sexual initiations, harmful cultural practices such as child marriages, sexual abuse, and barriers to access to sexual and reproductive health services. Reporting for Ebru TV, I'm Kaindo Stefano.
The University of Nairobi Vice-Chancellor Professor Stephen Gitahi Kiama will remain in office after the Cabinet Secretary for Education, Professor George Magoha, withdrew a letter that revoked his appointment. The consent of Magoha was recorded at the Employment and the Labour Relations Court in Nairobi. Before Magoha's withdrawal today, the Labour Court in Nairobi, through Justice Maureen Onyango, was expected to make a ruling on the matter regarding the appointment of Professor Kiama, which was revoked by Magoha in January 2020, but later suspended by the court. This is after Professor Magoha sought 30 days last month to give a dialogue and chance to avoid unnecessary litigations in court. Professor Magoha had appointed Professor Isaac Mbeche in the acting capacity at the University of Nairobi. We hit the break here on the Primetime News. When we come back, a bit of the business stories across the country, then to sports and the discussion you have been waiting for in regards to the crisis in the capital, Nairobi, and whether the national government, which is now undertaking some key and critical functions, can seal the big hole in City Hall in Nairobi. The hashtag on Twitter is News Compass and the short SMS code is 40920. Stay tuned, we are coming back after the break. In business, the Kenya Revenue Authority, KRA, has a free hand to compel taxpayers to provide details of wealth they have failed to disclose in their annual tax returns and offer the taxman free access to their records, computers and mobile phones. Here's this report by Musa Amir.
This was the verdict of a High Court judge after he dismissed a suit challenging sections of the tax law that offered KRA unfettered access to people's premises, records and devices, as well as the need for the taxpayer to provide information when required. Activist Okiya Omtata had challenged sections 57, 58, 59 and 99 of the Tax Procedures Act, arguing that it infringed on taxpayers' privacy by offering KRA full access to their dwellings, records and gadgets like computers and mobile phones. In a win for KRA, Justice Weldon Korir ruled that Mr. Omtata had failed to offer proof of how the laws were intrusive in pursuit of tax cheats. He also said that regulations were subjected to public participation before they became law. According to the judge, the provisions are only meant to enforce tax laws after a taxpayer fails to self-assess for payment to KRA or when evidence emerges of tax cheating. The contested sections of the tax law, among other things, empower KRA to direct the taxpayers to produce records and information on their tax debt. KRA defended its powers, saying they were necessary to obtain all essential information in order to make a fair decision on the tax liabilities of a taxpayer. While bankers deny that they have been sharing clients' data with KRA in the absence of court orders, the taxman admits to having received financial account records from banks in its quest to unearth tax cheats. KRA's enforcement unit has been using various databases to pursue suspected tax cheats, including bank statements, import records, motor vehicle registration details, Kenya Power records, and yes, even your water bill. For Ebru News, I'm Musa Amir.
And let's get the sports update and in regard to what has happened locally and the European UEFA Champions League 2019-20 season in Europe. Now, the Football Kenya Federation Electoral Board has set Friday as the deadline for the submission of delegates set to vote at the upcoming FKF elections in the country. The board will thereafter scrutinize the list and publish a preliminary register on Saturday over the weekend, 29th of February 2020. Today, after the window was disputed in regards to the voter register, will then be opened between February 29th and March 1st, 2020. If need be, appellants who will not get the satisfaction in the board's decision can further seek recourse at the Appeals Committee on March the 2nd. The final list of the delegates is set to be published on March 3rd, 2020 across the country. The Kenya Open Golf Limited, KOGL, the owners and the organizers of the Safari Golf Tour Series, has today announced a bumper increase in minimized price to pursue the individual events of the tour, one from 1 million to 1.5 million, as one of the series of the changes to be expected starting with the coming season of the tournament. Additionally, the Kenya Organizing Committee has said that it's working to ensure that at least half of the tournaments offer total prize money of between 3 to 4 million Kenya shillings as the tournament grows in stature. The Safari Golf Tour, which was launched in 2018 as a preparation part for local and regional professional players heading into the Kenya Open Golf Championship, has seen 18 professional events being held in Kenya and Uganda over the 2 seasons. As part of the expansion plans, the organizing committee sees the tour growing to become the region's biggest golf opportunity.
Yes, already we've got people like Chris Wood, who's coming. I mean, he's in the top. Chris Wood, we've got Hayden Porteous is coming in. Christian Bezuidenhout. Quite a lot of the South Africans are going to come in. George Kutsia is coming into play. We have Shubhankar Sharma, who's coming into play from India. We tried to get him last year. He came in, but he came in under special arrangements. This year, they're coming in off their own bat. Ashun Wu from Korea is also coming in. So we're getting some really some of the names that we wouldn't normally get here, and those are the ones as of now. There are 3 slots that are automatically offered to the winner of the Qatar Masters, the Oman, the Qatar Masters, and the Oman event, and also for the World Golf Championship that is happening in Mexico at the moment. The winner of that also, if he chooses to, can come here as well. So those 3 events might get us some really good.
However, we end it on that note on the Primetime News. Coming up next, though, a discussion that pertains what's happening in the capital, Nairobi. Governor Mike Sonko's era of errors, and whether the government can drive the city out of the deep hole to the heights of prosperity and hope. Behind me seated are nominated Senator Naomi Wako in the Senate. At the center is Member of Parliament, Uriri constituency, Mark Nyamita on ODM. And of course, on my immediate right will be lawyer and political strategist Kipchumba Karori. Keep your tweets coming. The hashtag on Twitter's News Compass. Later we'll sample them. And after the break, our discussion will be starting here on the program. Stay tuned.